Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. I'm going to give the audience about 2 minutes to come in. We don't want to start before we have people populating, so I will see you back again in 2 minutes. All right, y'all, let's go ahead and get started. So I just want to say good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Today we're talking about preventing burnout and strategies to start the new year refreshed and less stressed. The webinar will be a team presentation including speakers from ourselves, Humantelligence, and also Nivati. So my name is Vita Sternberg, and it's my pleasure to be serving as your moderator and host today. We've got a 30-minute presentation before a 10 to 15-minute Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions during today's presentation, please use the GoToWebinar questions feature, and I'll do my best to answer them in the meantime, or I'll save them for the presenters to address directly during that Q&A at the end of the presentation. If you'd like to reach out to me directly about questions regarding Humantelligence or webinar questions or future topics about webinars, you can reach out to me directly at vita.sternberg@humantelligence.com, or you can chat me directly on LinkedIn. You can also follow Humantelligence and Nivati on LinkedIn as well. So before we get started with the presenters, I just wanted to give you a brief overview of who Humantelligence is and who Nivati is. If you haven't heard of either of the companies, maybe you came from Nivati or you came from Humantelligence. So Humantelligence is thankful and proud to have received a lot of really reputable awards through 2021, including the Top 100 HR Tech Influencer Award, second place out of 500 submissions for the Miami Herald. We also are the HR Solution of the Year by Remote Tech Breakthrough of over 1,600 submissions, and HR Today named us last month as Top Innovator in HR Tech.
Hey Vita, one thing, I'm getting text from Dan that he cannot get in, that it says viewing Vita's screen. Maybe other people are having that same issue. Not sure if that's a...
Interesting. Vic slacked me that she's in and everything is going well. For any
okay. He got in. Go ahead, sorry about that.
Okay, great. Glad we're all on the same page. So I'll keep going and introduce Nivati now. So I actually discovered Nivati at the Sharma Inclusion Conference in 2021, and since then I have learned that they provide tools that include clinical counseling, mindful meditation, yoga and breathing exercises, and an on-demand video library with downloadable resources focused around understanding employee mental health and promoting positive practices. So for today's agenda, we're going to start with acknowledging that we all feel burnout, especially through 2021. I know it was a hard year for pretty much everybody. And we're going to give you some statistics around that topic. and try to connect understanding culture with preventing burnout. That will be more of the Humantelligence portion of the presentation. And I'm going to pause and take a poll question from the audience and see how all of you are feeling on the subject, especially maybe with some new statistics that you have learned throughout the presentation. And then we're going to share those poll results and hand it over to our two presenters from Nivati to give us a little bit more data around the topic and then offer solutions to reduce stress and hopefully kind of quell that burnout that we felt through 21 to start the new year refreshed and with less stress. And then we'll take that Q&A session right toward the end. And if you leave with anything, today's goal is to give you a quick overview of how both Humantelligence and Nivati address burnout and offer solutions to reduce the stress of your employees, creating a culture that empowers each employee to perform their best and be more productive. So now I'm going to hand it over to today's presenters. We have CEO Humantelligence, Juan Betancourt, who will be going first. And then from Nivati, we have Haley Harris, lead clinician there, and Amelia Wilcox, the founder. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to you, Juan, to talk about some data around burnout.
Great, thank you, Vita. So the problem that we all have experienced at our companies, whether they're small, large, and almost in any industry, is burnout in 2021 and continuing now in 2022. Research shows that 89% of employees are reporting burnout last year. 70% of employees would actually leave their organizations for another one offering resources to reduce burnout. And 42% of women feel uncomfortable talking about to their boss about burnout, compared to about 30% of men. Some of the top organizational causes of burnout: about 1 in 2 people say that it's being asked to take on more work. Going remote doesn't necessarily mean less work. Obviously, we've all learned that. 33%, so 1 in 3, feel that they have a toxic workplace culture. Now, this is might be even pre-COVID, and then 1 in 3 believe that they're being asked to complete work faster than ever before. I think productivity is being driven so hard at companies, and all the different productivity tools that people are expected to do more in shorter time, and all this is leading to this stress, friction, and burnout. So what we have here is this is a visualization on the Humantelligence platform. And for those who don't know Humantelligence, we measure culture through psychometrics and understand what a culture is for a team, a division, a group, a CEO dashboard, a culture. And so, for example, in this illustration, we measure 3 things. We measure what we call BMW, behaviors, motivators, and work styles. And where you see a lot of stress and burnout is where there's a conflict between 2 people who are very different often. And that difference causes stress and tension between 2 people when they're working, or a team that it could be considered dysfunctional, that leads to stress and more burnout. So in this example, if you look at the square red, those 2 people in the square, Beth and Victor, they're very different than the person on the left there. They're very spontaneous. They change direction quickly. They're very action oriented, versus steady people like actually myself. That's my picture pre-COVID, tan and healthy. And then Carrie, that could lead to stress. Now, I think, Vita, this is where I can share screen and show some other examples, or is that the next slide?
Yes, I'm going to give you the opportunity to just do maybe a quick demonstration of understanding this culture slide.
Yeah. And am I able to, I guess when I share a screen, I can draw on it, show my screen.
There you go. Your screen should be sharing now.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so again, our platform shows visualizations of culture and where there's differences between people. And so, you can see the visualization of, for example, this team here. And if I can figure out how to draw, here we go. Okay, sorry about that, everybody, learning about the drawing. So in this case, my team is 60% change oriented in this direction. Now, you might have some very extreme, decisive people working with some very deliberate people, and that could cause tension. This kind of disparate difference often causes tension, which causes stress, and burnout of people who don't like working with other people who think differently. Now, if you don't know that these people and these people are different from data, and it's just the day-to-day grind, you might come to the conclusion, this woman might come to the conclusion, this guy, they don't get along well. That's, they're doing it on purpose. The reality is we all are different in the way we work and the way we think, and so there is no right or wrong. And so tools like this, if I can get rid of that, tools like this help understand the diversity of a team and a group. And so you can see where the extremes are between Gabby, for instance, and myself being very extreme. She wants to make decisions quickly, decisive. I'm very deliberate. You can also see this as a bar chart in terms of people's motivations. Somebody might be really interested in financial security. This person, Lucas, he's actually a salesperson, versus someone who is all about service. And so Lucas and Dan might be working on a project together where he's focused on making money and what is in it for him, and Dan's more focused on the customer and what's important to the customer, less so about making money. And so that could lead to stress, friction, and burnout. So a lot of things are about more work, about doing it faster, but there's also this human component that is created at companies that create stress, friction, and burnout. And so those are some examples. The other thing I want to show is the remote work tips. When someone takes a psychometric assessment, typically it just tells you who you are. So I think, can you still see my screen, Vita?
Yep, you're still sharing, all good.
Oh, it's just taking a long time to upload. Okay, so a psychometric test, whether it's DISC, predictive index, strength finders, which are the behaviors of somebody, or Hogan, Lominger, some of the other more advanced ones, which are the motivators. We have a unique proprietary one around work energizers. These are just going to always show you where your strengths and your weaknesses are. We took that a step further with COVID to show people what the remote work tips are and where they fit, and who's easier working remote and versus not. And so, for example, for me, I'm a 71 out of 100, 100 being easier to work. Certain areas, such as this one here, helping versus self-reliant. Okay, I'm extremely helping, right? This is a range of about 15. So I love being with other people, helping them, sitting down with them, coaching them. But guess what? When you're in remote work, okay, it's not easy to do that. So most people typically who enjoy remote work are more self-reliant and less helping. And so because this is my powerful strength, my superpower, it also becomes my weakness in terms of working remote. And so it gives tips along wellness, productivity, and collaboration, because I am so extreme far, and that's going to be a challenge for me in the remote work environment. So you can use tools like this to understand where you're similar to what a remote work situation is and where you're very, very different. Again, another one is I love structure. I'm not very good with flexibility and kind of like shooting from the hip. And so working from home, I didn't know where the photocopier was. I didn't know how to get my day-to-day tasks done. That led to stress, that led to friction in me being able to be productive. Again, then the company asked me to do more. I was burned out and it took a while. So not in all areas. I'm obviously in many areas naturally inclined to work well remote, but in many of them, it did lead to stress and friction and burnout. And so tools like this, psychometric tools, can alert leaders, teams, and companies on who might actually, in a remote work environment, for instance, be more prone to burnout and stress. And you can identify that earlier with, looking at, looking at the team. If you're a leader, you can look at your team. And I apologize that it's so slow. You can look at your whole team here. And see who is at a high risk of burnout. Let's see here. Well, we might not look at the team if can't get enough. Okay, so here's what a team view would look like. This should work now. And so now you can see for the team for remote work, you can see each person on the team and where, for example, Dan is going to struggle the most with remote work and have stress and burnout in that environment versus someone like me who's, I still need to work on it. We all, like anything in self-awareness, we can all get better always wherever we are, but you can see now how this can be a really powerful tool. I'll stop there. No need to share any more, Vita. You can pull it back and then move forward to the next slides.
Okay, great. Okay, so we should be back to viewing the presentation. Let me know if anybody's having trouble viewing it. And in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and launch our first poll question. It's actually courtesy from Nivati, and it goes, how does your company culture currently support employee mental health? So I'm going to launch that now, and it should go ahead and propagate on your screen. Okay, great. I'm seeing some responses come in. All right, interesting results. I'll be excited to share these with you guys. We have about 30% of you have voted now, so I'm going to give it another minute. So get your votes in while you can. All right, that's almost 70% of you. So I'm going to give it another 10, 15 seconds, and then we will share the results and have the panelists give their comments and then move into Nivati's portion of today's webinar. All right, let's go ahead and close this and share the results. So we have got 85% of A, 85% EAP and or a therapy option. It's tied 50% between flexible work options and PTO and mental health days. Because we have static where you can check off multiple boxes, we're going to total more than 100%. So if you're seeing that math not add up, that's why. We've got 8% of other, and then also 8% of we don't offer any services currently. Hello? Can you guys hear me? Oh,
yes.
Go ahead and hide the results. There we go. So I forgot that we can't talk while the results are currently being displayed. So what do you guys as presenters think of that as far as 8% don't offer any services currently to deal with employee mental health, and then the number one option being an EAP or therapy option?
Yeah, I think what the data is showing us, so SHRM did a big study in August, and we're seeing, I think that's pretty in line, like 93% of companies are expanding their mental health benefits right now, whether that's EAP, adding in an additional mental health platform on top of that, increasing their medical plan on the mental health side. So almost all companies have that as an initiative right now. And then, yeah, we are seeing about 80% of companies currently utilize an employee assistance program. And yeah, I think it's pretty in line with what we've seen, what SHRM has put together as well. So good representation of what's going on. Haley, did you have any thoughts on that?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Okay, great. Then we will keep going through the slide deck. So what is mental health and why is it important is the first slide of Nivati. So I will turn it over to you, Haley and Amelia, whoever wants to take over or take turns going back and forth. Just let me know if you need me to move the slides along, or I'll just move them along as you naturally come to a close. So without that, go ahead and take over, you guys.
Great, thank you, Rita. So I'll start off with this one. As Vita mentioned, my name is Haley Harris. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I've been in the therapy field, the mental health field, for 10 plus years, studying it and being a therapist. And we've always known that mental health is really important, but I think over these last 2 years, we've seen how important it really is. And so it is getting talked about more. Burnout is definitely playing a big role with people's mental health. So when we talk about mental health, I always like to start with actually having a definition of what it is, because a lot of us kind of just have these assumptions. Mental health, described here by the World Health Organization, is a state of well-being in which an individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. One of the key parts that I love bringing up in our presentations is the little part that says can cope with the normal stresses of life. As Amelia is going to talk about, we know that what we've been going through has not been the normal stresses of life recently. So let's talk a little bit more about why it's important.
So yeah, like Haley said, there's just a lot going on. So pre-COVID, there were already all these pre-existing stressors. So, and this is all data from the American Psychological Association. So if you're interested in that, you can Google that study. The source is at the bottom. But there were already all these things kind of going on in our world that were causing a ton of stress for people. So mass shootings, climate change, immigration issues, sexual harassment and assault, the drug epidemic, and then suicide rates. And even as the world's been trying to open back up, we see a lot of these things coming back into play. There's been mass shootings, there's tons of suicides going on, there's all these things. And that is just kind of like our base. So we were already on the verge of this mental health crisis. And then COVID happened and all these other things in the last like 2 years. And those were just added on top as an additional layer. So you look at like COVID-19, learning how to work remotely or flexibly, or some companies, it's like people are coming into work and then they're like, oh, now we got to send you home again. They keep going back and forth. And then you add in like school on top of that for parents. We've got kids, you know, going in and out of school and doing at-home school, wearing masks, not wearing masks, like lots of things going on that just add to that stress for your employees if they have children. And there's social unrest. So we've had a ton of issues just in the news, a lot of things really stressing people out socially. And then economic uncertainty, we just have things just have gone crazy in the stock market as well, and it's kind of unpredictable. And the political polarization with the elections as well. And you can see these numbers under the new stressors are even higher than the pre-existing stressors. So all of these extra things are layered on top of what is already giving us a hard time, and it's affecting us even more. So that's what I really want people to take away, is it's not just like we're in the middle of a mental health crisis right now and it's because of COVID. It's like, no, this was already here. COVID like poured gasoline on it, lit it on fire, and you know, everyone's struggling. I don't think anyone hasn't been affected by what's going on right now in the world. Haley, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I think that was great. Thanks.
Okay. And then if we're looking at what mental health challenges mean for an organization, so you just want to talk about how does this affect your organization directly. So depression, bipolar, anxiety, and ADHD. This is a study done by Harvard Medical School. They looked at the lost productivity and absenteeism and kind of combined those together, so you can see across the board, on average, between being at work and not working and not being at work, we're seeing about 35 days lost on average in a given year, which is the equivalent of 7 work weeks, which is very, very significant and expensive for a company, right? So when our employees aren't in a good place mentally and emotionally, or even if someone in their family is struggling mentally or emotionally, right? If you have a kid who's struggling with depression or anxiety, that affects you directly as an employee, as their parent. So I think that's just an important thing to keep in mind as we're looking at these numbers. It doesn't have to be the actual employee. It could be someone in their family, and that's still going to negatively affect their performance. And then what this translates to in the workplace, I mean, we talked about absenteeism and presenteeism, but then we're also seeing issues with concentrating. They make more mistakes because they're not as engaged with what they're doing, or they're tired. Sleep is a huge one. So we actually just released a sleep library last week, and it's been really fun to watch how people are engaging with that and using these like sleep neuromusic tones to help them fall asleep. But there's a huge correlation between sleep and mental health. So people that have mental health issues don't sleep very well, and people that don't sleep very well develop mental health issues. So there's a very strong correlation there. And when you're not sleeping well, it makes it really hard to do a good job at work, and more issues with mistakes and things like that. And then physical issues. So there's also a link. Haley can probably talk to this a little bit more than I can, but just the link between mental health and physical health. So there's been a lot of research showing that when someone starts struggling mentally, they're more likely to have chronic illnesses. Haley, do you want to chat about that for a minute?
Yeah, that's definitely something I'm pretty passionate about as a yoga teacher as well. I love talking about these kind of things because it does show there is direct correlation with higher cardiovascular diseases, and some of it comes into play too because of that sleep issue as well that comes in there. It's all interlinked in a way. People will sometimes have digestive problems because of it, and they're often sicker and having to go to the doctors more when they struggle with their mental health.
Yeah, and chronic pain too, because if you think about it, so my background is in exercise physiology, nutrition, and massage therapy. So I'm very much like on the physical health side prior to starting Nivati and digging into mental health. But on the physical side, even when you just think about how your body holds stress or anger, like a lot of people have jaw problems when it's anger because they're clenching their jaw, or if they're stressed, they'll end up with shoulder problems because they're holding their shoulders up. So chronic pain, headaches, and things like that are all very linked to mental health as well.
So we've talked about, what those struggles are, the burnout. I think so many people are struggling with mental health and burnout. As Amelia mentioned, I don't think there's a single person that is not struggling in some way throughout these last couple of years with their mental health, and it is creating these burnout in work. And we're showing up less at work. When we do show up, we're not productive as usual. So some of the key burnout strategies that I always like to touch on are these 4 right here, and I'll kind of go through each one a little bit. A big thing is awareness. So we need to be aware of the signs of burnout, the signs of stress and exhaustion, and your poor mental health. Now being aware is going to is knowing that it's going to be different for me versus what it's going to be for Amelia. Amelia's struggles, her signs are going to be different probably than mine. Also keeping that in mind when we're looking at family members, their struggles might show up differently than mine would when I'm feeling burnt out. Some people, crash and lock themselves in their bedrooms and don't do anything. And then I see people that just get up and go and they don't stop. So it really affects us differently. So it's really understanding your signs and learning to recognize it. Because we go through this process where we start to get burned out, and a lot of the times we don't realize it until we've gotten to a place where we just can't function in some way or another. And so it's really helpful for us to be able to learn our signs, to be able to recognize it earlier and earlier and earlier, so we can avoid that point of that breakdown or whatever that burnout is. So awareness is key. And then we have boundaries. Boundaries, keeping a routine is very helpful to avoid burnout. Very important to keep a sleep routine, even on the weekends. A lot of people don't like to do that, but we need to keep a healthy sleep routine even on the weekends. Really trying to have those boundaries between work and home. It is so hard right now when people work from home, because now we just have our laptops and our phones and our computers and we just take them around the house with us, or it's like we're always available. So it's really, really important to avoid burnout. We need to have very healthy boundaries between work and home. I shut my office door. I encourage people, and try to practice this myself, where I do like a 5-minute transition time where I'm leaving my office in my home and I'm going to go do my home life after this. And I give myself a little bit of some meditation time or something that I just enjoy doing, a quick little stretch. So finding those ways to keep those boundaries, turning off notifications, things like that can be really helpful. Taking time off. I see so many people take time off and respond to emails, respond to Slacks. And I tell people, if this is your time off, take this time off. This is your time, because that's also another way that you're going to get more burnt out, is if you're constantly connected, it's just going to take on you and wear. So having those healthy boundaries is important. Self-care, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later as well, but really taking time to focus on yourself and your needs. Self-care, it's not like a self-indulgence or that you're being selfish. It's actually doing things to take care of yourself. And I guarantee pretty much every therapist out there will encourage self-care plans, because it is so important to be making sure that you're doing things that are good for you in all different areas. And the last one on here is reaching out. So this is a hard one for many people. I love that mental health is getting talked about more and people are being more courageous in reaching out for help. But reaching out and being vulnerable with people that you can trust. So that can be family and friends. And then sometimes reaching out to a professional. You don't have to hit that crash point before you reach out to a professional. You can do it at the beginning to learn how to avoid getting to that burnout point in your life. And the one thing that is important with all of these that we're going to talk about in the next slide is one of my most favorite things to talk about, something I'm extremely passionate about, is mindfulness. Because all of these 4 things, we have to have mindfulness to be able to put those in place. We have to be practicing mindfulness to be able to be aware of our signs. We have to practice mindfulness to understand what boundaries we're needing to put in place, to be practicing our self-care, and to be able to say, hey, I need help. So mindfulness practices, research finds that mindfulness actually brings positive impacts on mental health conditions. It reduces symptoms of depression, anxiety, as well as, I don't know why these aren't on there, PTSD and ADHD. It also helps reduce those symptoms. And it's linked to positive health behaviors. The key in mindfulness is practicing having your mind in the present moment without judgment. So like if you're in that moment and you're saying, I'm really struggling, don't be telling yourself I shouldn't struggle, this is bad, this is wrong. Just tell yourself I'm struggling, maybe I need some help, maybe I need to reach out to somebody. That mindfulness and not judging is really key there. So these are some ways that you can really encourage practicing mindfulness. Yoga poses. Yes, yoga can be a physical activity. I know it is more here in the West. My favorite practice of using yoga is to be used more for relaxation and to be used to increase mindfulness skills. That is what I use it for in therapy. As well as meditation, it helps with relaxation, mindfulness, and calming the brain. Mindfulness exercises can be very simple. Can take 1 minute throughout your day, a few times throughout the day. They are actually, mindfulness exercises are practiced in evidence-based therapy treatments. What that means is it's been studied and researched so that we can use it in the therapy room. If it's not studied and researched and proven, we can't use it as a therapy technique. Mindfulness is actually used in evidence-based treatment, so it is very helpful. And then breath work. Breath work actually does show to help improve physical and psychological health.
And yeah, it's interesting what you said about yoga too, because it's like, there's like on one end of the spectrum, like the power yoga workout, like getting so strong and flexible. And then on the other side, there's like the restorative yoga stuff, which I also really love. That's like slow and deep and thoughtful. And anyway, it's kind of a fun activity just because there's so much diversity just within one practice.
Yeah, and both ways could be help with something for somebody. Then
definitely. So yeah, actively improving mental health. If as an organization we're focused on trying to get our employees in a better place mentally and emotionally, there are big benefits to that, right? Some of the ones we've seen in our clients is just like reductions in healthcare costs. So they're having to escalate to prescription medications less, or seeing practitioners and doctors through their health insurance because they're able to get kind of frontline help. So you're going to see that healthcare costs decreasing, absenteeism and presenteeism, super challenging to measure, And most organizations aren't measuring it in their organizations. So I know there are some that do and most don't. But we are seeing, you know, if employees' mental health is improving, they're able to work more effectively. Even just in self-reported surveys that we've done, when the organization is focused on that, then the employees are reporting that they're more engaged at work and they're able to work more, and we're seeing less sick days. And then increase in employee retention. Definitely, I think we're also living in a applicants market, right? So we're seeing the Great Resignation, people are leaving, there's a lot of options out there. So I think what we're seeing is that candidates are prioritizing companies that are putting these benefits in place to make sure that the employees feel like their health and wellness is being prioritized. And so a lot of companies are looking for ways to do that so they can attract the right talent. But they're definitely seeing, you know, better attracting of candidates and retention of employees when they're focusing on mental health. And the best way to do that is really, it has to come from the top down. So Haley and I talk about this a lot actually, but being able to get the C-level suite as involved as possible. So one of the best ways to improve mental health in your organization is just to talk about it. And that doesn't cost anything. It's not hard. And the higher up the food chain you can go to get people involved in talking about it, the better you're going to see your results. So, and maybe that is just like you in HR, and it's like that's as high as you can go because the C-suite isn't really interested in talking about it. But what we've seen work really well in the organizations that are kind of leading the charge here is they have the CEO getting up and talking to their employees about how it's okay not to be okay. And then those employees feel safe and they're able to ask for the help that they need, and it just trickles down through the whole organization. So that is my biggest advice I usually give companies is like, just figure out how to get the stakeholders in the company as high up as you can to be open and vulnerable and start the conversation. So then on the qualitative benefit side, also if you're focused on mental health, employees are happier, they're more engaged. I kind of talked about all these things already. Oh, a big one though is conflict resolution and communication. So we do a lot of trainings with organizations where we come in and we talk to them about how to train their managers, or we'll meet with the managers and talk to them about how to improve mental health in the workplace. And we do a lot of teaching around how to manage conflict when it arises in the workplace. We even have done like lots of coaching where we get involved in, you know, actually someone like Haley, a counselor, is actually like helping with conflict directly. But we will see a lot of communication improvement and conflict resolution. And again, if we have leadership involved in just having conversations around mental health, that stuff, some of it will happen on its own too. So yeah, kind of covered all of those, I think. And then Haley, do you want to talk about this? Just some of the best tools you guys have seen?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, self-care is really crucial in our mental health and preventing burnout, or even if we get to the point of burnout and trying to get back to a healthier place. Tools for self-care. So a lot of times I know people think self-care can be, you know, bubble baths and all that, which it can be, and that's great. But when we're talking about self-care, we're actually really looking at what are you doing to take care of yourself, which includes some things that people often kind of don't think about. So what is it that you're putting into your body with the food? That's taking care of yourself. Are you giving yourself a healthy diet? Are you getting your regular physical checkups? A lot of people forget those, especially over these last 2 years. I've had so many clients that are like, oh my gosh, I haven't been to a dentist in 2 years. So are you getting your checkups? And exercise, physical activity, any kind of physical activity is better than no activity. That healthy sleep hygiene we talked about, taking time for yourself to relax. I find a lot of people have a hard time taking time out for themselves to relax. A lot of times people feel like they need to be doing something, and if they stop to relax, that they're being lazy. So really reframing that and saying, you know what, this is actually some time to take care of myself, to relax and do nothing. Having a healthy support system, looking at who's in your circle, keeping that regular schedule that we talked about. Self-care can also include things like reading and journaling, listening to music that you enjoy. That's taking some time out to just do something that you find fun and enjoyable. Turning your phone off actually can be a form of self-care, and I think a lot of us could probably do it a little bit more. I think I could, but just kind of saying, hey, you know what, I'm going to put my phone off to the side. I'm not even going to check it. I'm not even going to try to think about it, and it's just going to go over there. Can actually be a form of you taking care of yourself. Creating those healthier boundaries, not just with work, but also looking at people, the boundaries you have with people in your life. Kind of that goes back to the healthy support system. Are those people part of a healthy support system, or are they, more damaging the mental health and creating increased likeliness of burnout for you? Taking time to decompress, so doing things that allow you to, if you're in that escalated state, to come down from that state, and just doing things that you like to do. It's that whole recharge. When people say, what can I do for self-care? I often start saying with what recharges you. That's going to be different for everybody. A bubble bath could very well recharge somebody, while somebody going on a run might be recharging for them, and that's fine. There's no wrong or right. It's just really looking at what you need to not get to that burnout phase.
Yeah, Haley, we actually have a comment from one of the attendees saying that they love all of these suggestions. They personally love taking 30 minutes to read before bed, going on walks, getting some of that exercise. So it's definitely resonating with people. I know it resonates with me as well, especially if I can turn my phone off. It's always a great thing. So it's good to know that the attendees are 100% on board with all the suggestions.
Good.
Yeah, and I'd add to that as well, just like some of the things we've seen organizations do, right? Like, so there's a really good list of things you can do personally for self-care, but if you're thinking about how you can do this in your organization and facilitate that for your employees, people do, wellness focuses every month, and maybe you're focused on nutrition one month and sleep another month. You can do, group challenges and things like that HR has been doing forever. But some of the things we've seen is just like, it could be as simple as giving your employees permission to set their Slack status as, going for a walk or whatever in the middle of the day, right? It's like, how do you cultivate a culture where people are just allowed to take the time that they need? We've also seen, just like, one of our clients has like a weekly powwow with their employees, and anybody who wants to come can come. And they all talk about their challenges, and it's just like super open and vulnerable culture that they've created. And their people like don't change jobs very often. They have amazing retention because everyone doesn't want to leave. They just feel like they belong. They have a family. They feel safe and comfortable there. So, but yeah, and then we actually here at Nivati, we do no meeting Wednesdays. So not counting today, which happens to be a Wednesday, and this kind of counts as a meeting, but the whole team is discouraged from setting meetings on Wednesdays. So even the sales team, because that's the opportunity for them to get through all of their work and just like kind of break from Zoom for a minute, because we're just in back-to-back meetings every day and always on Zoom. So those are just some of the ideas, that we've implemented or we've seen other people implement to just give their employees a little bit of breathing room and permission to take the time that they need.
Yeah, as far as get-togethers and building that culture of having the comfortability to let people know maybe you are going on a walk or stepping away from your computer. At Humantelligence, we do a monthly all-hands-on-deck meeting where we talk about what we've been working on, and then also offer a fun fact that's usually themed per month. I don't know if you want to comment some on that one. You always lead them, but it's definitely helped me to connect more with my remote employees, because Humantelligence, we're all remote. So oftentimes I won't see certain members of the team at all, and it's a chance to kind of communicate with people and build those coworker relationships that make communication more easy. So are we good for this last slide? Do we want to move into the Q&A session, or is there anything else that we want to touch on?
Yeah, I think we covered a lot of the tools that are really effective. So if we want to move into Q&A, that's good for us.
I think Q&A is next. Yes, it is. So I've got 5 questions saved up from the presentation. And usually they come in as we're going, and I'll read them chronologically. So it's kind of reverse. We're going kind of toward back the beginning. So if anybody needs a refresher on anything, let me know. So the first question is actually for everybody. You can either choose to skip it or we can answer alphabetically. It's around, have you felt any relief from remote work continuing rather than going back into the office at the break of the new year? So for 2022, now that I think people were kind of anxious that they might have to go back into the office, and then we've had all these variants come up, and Humantelligence is remote. I think Nivati, some of you work remotely as well. So have you felt a source of relief from that, or is it still kind of, is it giving you more burnout per se?
So I guess I'm first because I start with
Go.
A. So we've always been a remote team for 11, almost 12 years. So I am like neutral as far as like my own personal team. But what we've seen from our clients and what we felt from our clients is twofold. Because pre-COVID, we did on-site corporate massage for businesses. So we got like completely annihilated by COVID because everyone started working remotely. So it's a mixed bag as people are like coming back into the office, and then like massage is starting to pick up again on the massage side, and then it goes back away. And so, yeah, I mean, I have conflicted feelings about it from a sales standpoint as far as what we're providing for our customers. But for ourselves, I've noticed also I run an HR brain trust group, which is VPs of HR and above across the US. And we meet once a month. And so I'm in these brain trust meetings. It's a peer-to-peer learning environment, and they talk about what their biggest challenges are and help each other solve problems. And I will tell you what I've noticed is that everyone is stressing about, it's like the change is what's stressful, right? It's like, oh, we brought people back into the office, I have to go home again. Once they're kind of settled and either remote or working on site, I feel like their stress level goes down from what I've observed, but it's just the change that's really painful for people and causing a lot of stress.
Right, I think definitely the change of when you're going to go back could be a big source of stress. Haley, what about how you're feeling in 2022?
Well, as Amelia mentioned, we've been remote this whole time. I love remote. It's my thing. But what I find with like a lot of my clients is it's a big mix. It's just that whole, it's like how, when Juan was showing that Humantelligence thing earlier, everybody's so different. We work so differently. Our needs are so differently. And so I actually find my clients that have kind of the option to, hey, let's go into the office if you want, or stay home if you want. The clients that have the option usually are a lot happier. But it really is a mix of emotions for people.
Yeah, I completely agree. And Juan, how about your 2022 kicking off with any source of relief, or are we still feeling the big burnout from 2021?
Well, I'll piggyback the other speaker comments. I think it is, diversity. Humans are so different, and so it's a one case by case situation. And I agree that companies that have the most diverse programs where people can do remote 100% or in office 100% or hybrid, or they can pick and choose based on their needs. Those are the people in the companies that seem to have the least burnout. Work is no longer, being, driven by the constraints of the company. It's now, the individuals have a lot more leverage. And for those companies, individuals that can set up their life the way that brings them the most happiness, they're going to be less stressed. And that's becoming, we're all figuring that out, I think, now in our second year post-COVID.
Yeah, I completely agree. Well, we've got one question for you, Haley, and then one for Juan, and then another, we'll go back to the group. So this one came in for you, Haley, which is, what is your biggest source of stress and your biggest tip for overcoming that? Now, maybe getting too personal, we could speak to professional stress, but because you are the lead clinician at Nivati, I'm hoping the attendees think it'll have some kind of insight as far as overcoming maybe a specific source that is unrelenting.
Okay, well, so I mean, a little personal on the personal side, but I think a lot of people feel this is trying to balance this new way of living and working online completely, as well as I'm raising my children, and schools go back and forth online and at home, and if someone's exposed, they stay home. It's just, and balancing it all, and they're in activities and sports, so and balancing my own self-care, and it's just trying to figure it all out. And I think a lot of people, I think, feel that too, that it's just, there's a lot going on for people, and it is very stressful. And I think the second part of the question was, how do I?
Biggest tip for overcoming that, which is kind of what we've been discussing as far as setting boundaries and self-care tips. So you can skip over it if you'd like, but if there's anything specific you want to give people insight on one more time.
Self-care. So as a mom and as a therapist, I am there for a lot of people. And as the lead counselor, I'm there for a lot of people. So it is so important that I carve out time for myself. and do things that I really enjoy and not feel guilty about it. So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing.
Well, thank you for answering that question. Haley, we'll give you a break, and this one is for you, Juan, and it is, I'll just try to read it verbatim and then maybe do any explanations. So regarding the team view from Juan's shared portion, how much does poor communication result in toxic environments increasing burnout? Which I think we had a slide saying that toxic workplace culture is one of the largest contributors to burnout, since Humantelligence offers communication tools. On how much do you think poor communication adds to people's stress?
I don't know the quantifiable percent, the explanation of it, but all the research shows and all of our customers agree that when they put in a platform like Humantelligence that allows you to understand other people, our tool also is integrated to email and calendar. And so when you write an email, you can click on it and understand how best to communicate. And so at every moment that there could be friction, we lessen that friction to increase engagement and actually a higher vibration or resonance. And when you have higher resonance, that stress goes away and that friction goes away. And so we're sure that our clients are experiencing a little bit less burnout because of that improved communication, connection, and vibrational resonance between two people. Kind of like any couple who's in a relationship, as you go forward in 1 year, 3, 5, you learn how to communicate with each other. It's no different at work, and our tool and platform helps with that.
Yeah, I know that for me, on the topic of burnouts, emails were a big source of stress for me. So the tool like Humantelligence that plugs into your email and provides those tips on chatting with people, especially if you're all remote, definitely reduced that for me. So I guess in 2022, emails helped reduce my stress and burnout. Okay, thank you for answering that, Juan. We're going to go back to kind of these questions aren't directed to anybody, so feel free to chime in. So the next one is, with the talk of mental health, how important are DEI programs? Which is interesting because I met Nivati at the SHRM Inclusion Conference around DEI. So if you guys want to take on that question.
Haley, that's you.
Will you repeat it just one more time so I heard it all?
Yeah, of course.
I think I missed part of it.
With the talk of mental health, how important are diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, or just diversity and inclusion programs?
Yeah, no, I think it's extremely important because mental health includes a person's overall well-being and who they are, and part of that social support system, that inclusion piece, the diversity piece. It's extremely important for, those are directly correlated, definitely, our mental health with those kind of things.
Yeah, I know DEI is always a big topic at Humantelligence, so I think anytime you can bring it up is great, especially around people who might be not the same neurodivergent as yourself, like understanding the differences in communication between a team and how different words can mean different things to other people, and having kind of DEI programs around that and understanding everybody is kind of one and the same. Okay, so we've got one more question for all of you, which is, with the Great Resignation that was mentioned earlier, what do you all do to reduce turnover at your organizations?
So for us, I mean, we're a small business, right? So we've got 20 administrative employees, and then we've got a couple thousand practitioners. But yeah, from like the administrative employees, like our core team, because we're a smaller company, we give stock options to all of our employees. So they all feel like they're owners in what we're doing. That's really important to me as the CEO, to make sure our whole team is like super engaged and treats this like it's their own baby. And so that, I think that's really helpful, because people that value and have that ownership mindset are attracted and less likely to leave. But yeah, we're a remote team, so we have every Monday we do like our team meetings. We have these like fun things that we do, like questions of the week, and I mean, we have a local group here in Utah, because even though we're remote, most of our teams are in Utah, or most of our team members, and we've gone on like hikes and stuff. So just trying to think through, like, how do we foster that connection, which is what people are really after, right, in life as well as in work. They're looking for a sense of belonging and connection with the people around them. So, you know, we've done like Halloween parties and things just like all over Zoom, and try to meet in person whenever we can. Even like I travel a lot for work. I go and speak at conferences and things. And so whenever I travel somewhere where one of my employees lives, we always try to like meet in person and stuff too. So we're just very conscious on trying to facilitate connection. But yeah, things like stock, and, you know, we're very diligent about doing one-on-ones. So that's something I'm like personally very passionate about, making sure, again, fostering that connection so that employees feel connected to their managers, which is ultimately, you know, why people quit most of the time, is because they don't like their manager. So yeah, those are some of the initiatives that we do.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Holly.
I was just gonna piggyback on her, just because, since, you know, I do work in the admin team, part of, I know what helps a lot is, you know, that one-on-one, I know if I'm struggling with anything, I can go to my supervisor or Amelia, and I know that they're going to care about me as a person and my mental health and well-being, and they'll always be supportive of that. It's that leadership that we talked about. Like, she talks about it, so we all know it's okay if we're not okay. That's
At Humantelligence, we're similar to you, Haley and Amelia, that we have a small company. We're only about 15 people. 3 key things that we do. We do give stock to almost every employee. We have weekly meetings between every boss and subordinate. It's mandated, at least on your own time. You figure out when, but you have to have one-on-one every week. Otherwise, you feel kind of like loose, all remote. And then the third thing is, you know, we shifted we're a 6-year-old company. 3 years ago, it was very top down. Everything came from me. And there was definitely disgruntled employees, and people weren't taking ownership. And I finally became self-aware and learned and got feedback, and thank God I listened to the company. But I started just to delegate, and not in a not care way, but say, it's up to these 15 people who are going to make or break the company, not me mandating and telling them what to do. And so even though sometimes they do things that I don't agree with, the benefit and the level of engagement and ownership that they have, because I let them run with it, is like this. But when I was telling them what to do, sure, they do exactly what I wanted, but then I'd lose like 80% of that energy, that vibration that every human brings. And so the more you can delegate and let people have ownership, not just equity, but ownership of decisions, strategy. The closer it's to strategy, the more you'll get out of them. If the only ownership they have is on execution, you know, then you're not going to get much out of them. So that was a huge inflection point for my company, and we've doubled revenue every year since. And we were kind of flat for like 3 years before that. And it's really giving ownership to decisions and strategy to each employee.
Great. Yeah, I like all the insight around one-on-ones. I had never done them before Humantelligence. I never worked remote either. And I can say they've made me feel connected to everyone that I've worked with at Humantelligence. So it seems like we're all pro one-on-ones, which is great to know. And with that, we've answered all of the questions, and we're just about out of time. So I wanted to tell all of the attendees that there was a recording of this webinar, and it will be sent to the email address that you registered with. And for those of you who couldn't see this and you're watching the recording, thank you for registering, and we hope you enjoy it. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to any of us directly. And thank you to all the presenters for taking the time out of your day to come and give your portions. And thanks to all of the attendees. Any final comments from the presenter team?
Yeah, just if you guys are interested in connecting with myself or with Haley, you can absolutely just connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty easy to find. I'm pretty active on there. So it's just Amelia Wilcox. And Haley as well is also on LinkedIn and pretty active. So yeah, happy to help in any way we can if there's anything we can do for you.
All right, great. Well, thanks everybody, and have a great rest of your Wednesday.
Thank you.